afternoon, everyone. This is Evan Kemper checking in with you for the third part of our Splints 101 series, the post-processing section. Today, I'll be going through kind of assisting Cory with questions while he's over there in the hot seat doing the post-processing live for everyone.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Evan. My name is Cory Lambertson. I'm the product support manager here at Whitmix Corporation. And today we are going to be polishing splints. So super exciting. I know this is a topic that, you have to do it the correct way or else it does not look clear. And so I'm hoping that I can demonstrate this for everybody today. And we're going to be juggling a little bit for where I'm at. So we're going to be using a handpiece today. Then we're going to use our curing unit, then a handpiece, and then I have to move in a lathe. And so I'm limited with my workspace here. So we're going to be juggling cameras. Evan may or may not be playing elevator music when that's happening.
I already got it queued up.
And so we're going to go ahead and get started. Once again, we are going to start off with the IFU. So we can see Evan has it pulled up on the screen here. Just a reminder once again for everybody as well, this is being recorded so you can watch it later, you can share it with people. Also, it is approved for CE credits, so at the end of this course you will receive an email in regards to taking the test for your CE credits, so that is validated.
Yeah.
So from here, if we look at the VeriSplint IFU, so I have a computer over here, so that's why I'm pointing. If we jump to the actual post-processing requirements, so if you scroll down a little bit on your screen, Evan, under post-processing, the very first steps are we're going to go ahead after it's done printing, we're going to remove the objects from the build plate, which we saw that at the end of section 2, and then from there, I'm going to remove the supports from the object, throw away the supports, and then I'm going to start washing the splint in the alcohol baths. So it's a 2-bath system. The first bath is just a dirty bath, we call it. And so what that means is taking the bulk of the resin off. The second bath has to be a fresh bath of alcohol. It has to be fresh, and that's part of the 510K FDA guidelines that we, when we actually submitted for our FDA 510K, we had to stress the important fact that we used fresh alcohol. That's not only just for our splint resin, but for most biocompatible resins, that final wash has to be a fresh bath of alcohol. It's imperative that you do that. From there, after you are done with the alcohol baths, you're going to use compressed air and blow dry it. And then we're going to move on to the curing units, so the curing section. So I'm going to go ahead and set up my camera. Hopefully I don't lose anybody or nobody gets dizzy from me moving the camera. All right, so from here, the next step after we do the alcohol bath is we're going to go ahead and cure it into a curing unit. So from here, if you were to scroll up, Evan, I think this also shows, this is the older
IFU. So
okay, so
yeah, there is an updated IFU coming out. This is just the one that you would get off our site, but we have made some changes, which will also include having the IntelliRay and the Sunray in the instructions for acceptable curing units. And the one that you see over there with Cory is the IntelliRay.
Yeah. So I have a series of splints here that we're going to use today. So this is actually the one that Evan printed or that me and Evan printed on Wednesday. And so we can see that it has not been cured yet. And the reason why is because there is a little bit of a yellowing factor that happens. So if you see, this is the uncured one, and then this is actually the cured one. It's kind of hard to see in the webcam, but this one does have a little bit of a tint to it. And it happens from that final curing process. It's breaking down the active monomers, it's breaking down the photoinitiators. Now over time, this slightly yellowed splint, it will start to fade back to clear. So the curing unit that we're using today, this is the Uvatron IntelliRay 600. We're going to go ahead and place this splint into the Uvatron for a total of 300 seconds. So it's a total of 5 minutes of cure in the IntelliRay and in the Sunray 400, the IntelliRay 600. It is the same amount of time. It's a total of 5 minutes, so 300 seconds. So the reason why I like this curing unit here is because it has a very spacious envelope inside, so you can cure a lot of units at once. Not only that, it is also validated for the Dentka resins, which is really cool if you can have a curing unit that is covering multiple resins. So I'm going to go ahead and place our splint into our curing unit. It doesn't matter which side you have up. I have not the intaglio surface, but the opposing surface on facing up. So I'm going to go ahead and place it into the curing unit and close the door. So I already have it set. It's kind of hard to see for 300 seconds. And I'm going to go ahead and power it on. So we can see this actually has these 3 little lights on. This is telling us that it is on. You can see the light passing through. Now, there is a difference between the IntelliRay 600 and the Sunray 400. And the main differences is that the IntelliRay has a actual timer on it. It's programmable up top. You can change the intensity of light. You can change the amount of time. It also has a shutter built inside of it. I don't think you guys would have been able to hear that, but when I powered it on, the shutter actually made a little clicking noise. And if I was to open up the door prematurely before it gets down to that 300 seconds, it will activate the shutter and close it. If you have the IntelliRay or the Sunray 400, it doesn't have the shutter. If you open up this door, it will literally blind you. If it ever comes down to a zombie apocalypse, I've been telling everybody this is my weapon of choice, or not this one, but the Sunray 400, because I could literally use it as a beamer and melt people down. It's that bright. So while that's going on, do we have any questions so far of where we're at?
Yeah, we do have a question related to the auto flash.
Okay.
From Jesse, and it's with the auto flash, do you need to use nitrogen? If not, is the amount of flashes needed significantly less? You want to answer that one?
Yes, so nitrogen isn't needed at all for our splint resin. It's just the 6,000 flashes, and it has to be 6,000 flashes no matter what. If you go below 6,000 flashes, then you're not actually completing the cure process that was validated and tested for biocompatibility and toxicity. And if you go longer than 6 minutes, well, you're doing extra work. I mean, you're doing extra curing. That's not going to create any issues either. But you have to go for 6,000 flashes. If you have the Uvatron, you have to go for 5 minutes. You have to. I know a lot of people, they like to play with the settings because they think it gets less. I mean, because they see that it gets less yellowing. But remember, you're putting a patient at harm at that point, and that's the last thing we want to do. I was put a patient at harm. So this has about go ahead.
Yeah, well, we did have another question from Dan about how does the auto flash with nitrogen compare to the IntelliRay or the Sunray?
The actual final cure of both objects are, I mean, the toxicity report came back equal. The difference, though, is that with this actual curing unit, this actually has a more severe yellowing effect than the auto flash. So the auto flash has less of a yellowing effect. Now, a common complaint with the splints, and this happens for any clear resin that you print, is that when it's on the build plate, it looks crystal clear. And then when you wash it, it looks frosted. And then when you cure it, it changes in color. That's across the board for any type of material that you're printing. But the difference between the actual curing units and does one have less yellowing than the other, or the toxicity from one to the other, the actual auto flash is going to have a slightly less yellowing tint, but the actual final result isn't going to be changed as in durability or performance of the splint itself.
Great. We had another question, actually two kind of along the same lines from Dan and Christopher. Can the 6,000 flashes be separated, say 2,000, then let it cool, 2,000, and let it cool, and then the final 2,000, or does it all need to be done at the same time?
All has to be done at the same time. That's actually a good question. To my knowledge, it needs to be all done at the same time. That's something we could find out, but yeah, to my knowledge, it all has to be done at the same time since that's what was tested. I mean, once again, we're not going to police you. We're not the resin printing police. So if you want to customize it how you want, that's at your own will. But remember, you are taking risk with the patient and risk with the performance of the material that we have 3D printed today.
All right. We did have another one come in. Let's see, the curing won't change the dimension of the appliance as we have an analog process, and why? So I'm thinking they're The question is why, with an analog process, do you see more dimensional change during curing than when you do it here? And the main primary reason for that is one, the different chemistries don't have the same amount of shrinkage as we have with the other acrylics that we'd use in an analog process. They're down in the like 1 or like half to probably 1.5% range. Whereas in some of the analog acrylics, you can have up to 16%. The other thing is most of the curing is already done at this point. So you're really just doing that final outer cure to get that outer surface to where it needs to be for biocompatibility, and then also a little bit on the strength and those kind of things for the entire appliance, but you're not getting much shrinkage effect from the actual post cure.
Yeah, it's just a surface cure that we're actually completing with this final cure process. Yep, those are all really good questions. So the curing is completed. So we actually cured the splint for 5 minutes in the IntelliRay 600. And so the next steps from here is actually removing and getting rid of all the little support nubs. Now, it's maybe a little hard to see if I hold it from the side. I don't know. You'll have to tell me, Evan, if it's visible or not.
It's a little hard to see, but you can kind of see it there on the anterior, that kind of roughness on the border of, yeah. So those are all little just pieces of supports that are stuck after these supports are broken off. And of course, we got to take those off.
Yeah, so in the IFU, the instructions for use, it says to use I think it's a cross-cut bit to remove the supports. I actually find that to be a little too aggressive. And this is something that you do have a little more freeway or you can adjust for. I actually use fiber wheels. I find that the fiber wheels are an excellent way to remove the supports and remove the actual scarring from the printing process. And then actually, it kind of does like a light sanding. So I actually start with the brown wheel first. This is from Whitmix Corporation. Evan has it pulled up on the screen so you can see it. So this is, I believe the brown wheel is the coarse wheel. I don't think it actually says maybe, but this is.
It does up here. Yeah, brown's coarse, red is fine.
Yeah, so I actually start with the coarse wheel first. And so this coarse wheel, it takes the bulk of those supports off, and we're trying to get rid of as much scarring as possible from the printing process with the coarse wheel. And then I'm going to switch over to the red, which is the fine, which is it's just going to kind of like finely sand the coarse scarring marks away. So this is, if you're into woodworking at all, think of this as 80 grit, and then we're switching to the 120 or 220 grit. So I'm going to go ahead and I already have the coarse wheel on, and I'm going to grab one of the splints. Now I do have one done already that I've already removed these supports, and it has more of a matte finish. So I'm going to grab the one that we just cured, which was this one here. It's still warm. And so let me see if I can tilt the camera down maybe a little bit more. And the best part about this presentation is that I had to move the handpiece to the left-hand side since I'm left-handed. And if any of you, the labs that you work at, if you have that left-hand technician and you're right-handed, I'm sure the guys will appreciate me when they go to use it next because it's all on the opposite side. So let me go ahead and change this just a little bit more so you can see. So I do have vacuum on. I'm going to go ahead and put my safety glasses on. Of course, safety first. On doing this best we can. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go actually at a slow rate of speed. For mine, I think I'm doing 6,000 RPMs per minute. So I'm just going to lightly take away those support pins. And you can see maybe a little bit of the dust flying. Now I do have vacuum going. You can wear a mask during this point in time, and realistically, we all should probably be wearing masks right
now. Let's see, while you're working on that, I'm gonna address a few more questions. Dan wanted to point out that there are larger wheels available in the same kind of abrasive grit for a lathe, so they'll last quite a bit longer. And you can actually see we do have the 3-inch abrasive wheel options as well. We just don't have a picture on the website.
Now I have not used the lathe yet. We should give that a shot maybe next time we.
Yeah.
Or the 3-inch wheel with the lathe.
And we also had a question. This one's coming from Dr. Maddie. Are the supports on the occlusion? If so, won't they interfere with the nice occlusal contacts you made in the software? So yes, in this case, the way it's nested, the supports are on the occlusal surface. And that is one of the kind of main questions that we'd have to, or issues that we have to address with printing splints. So part of that is, instead of using that crosscut burr that we mentioned earlier, he's using these abrasive wheels, which just, they don't dig in as much, especially if you're going with light pressure. You're not really like cutting at it as much as it's just kind of sanding away evenly across that surface. So as long as you're, after you've done some practicing, you keep even light pressure, then you're really just adjusting it all at a surface level. And then of course, each step down from there is less aggressive. So as long as you're not going, being too aggressive with your grinding, then you shouldn't really affect those contacts. The other option is if you are more concerned about the number of supports that are on that surface and you wanted to have the least amount, then you would want to nest your print more at that 60 or towards that 60-degree angle where you'll get much fewer supports. And maybe, how far along are you on the grinding? Maybe I could pull up Composer over here and show them the difference.
Yeah, I mean, I have time. So right now, while you're pulling up Composer to show them the difference, so I'm just about completed with the brown wheel. And so if you look close, you can start to see it's got like kind of like a frosted now, like a matte finish. And right now, if you're to be able to see it firsthand with me, you'd be able to see that there's kind of like micro scratches on this surface. Now, something that I'll do is I'll go over it one way, and then I am going to change I'm going to go perpendicular to the first way I went on it. So that kind of helps hide any sort of like, I guess, deeper scratches. And so I've already gone over it in one direction, and now I'm going to finish it off from the other.
And you could also kind of see when he was showing that occlusal surface, you can still see all the contour of the ramps and everything that we put in the software. So it's really just knocking off those surface supports.
So let me see if I can get a good view of that. Yeah, so you can see all the contour. And if you look at the screen that Evan's got right now,
yeah,
go and flip it over, you can see this is the same splint.
Yeah, so you can see all the same contours.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and switch from the coarse wheel to the actual fine wheel. Oops, actually I need to finish one step on this one. Go ahead, Evan. And
all right. So first I'm going to put this at 20 degrees. So this is our bottom line. And we'll just auto apply supports. And you get about the number we have on there right now that you're finishing off. So, and you can see they do come across all of our posterior areas and the anterior. Now, if we go remove that, and let's say go to a 60-degree angle, so that's 60 right there, and we put it on supports, there probably won't even be any in the posterior. Yeah. So but the downside to this really is just that it's going to take longer. And you may need to, depending on the orientation, adjust that internal offset of 100 microns. But you can see there, we pretty much don't have any supports on our occlusal surface. And just as an idea of the difference in time, you'd be looking at about an hour and a half for this print. And I believe, so about half the time. I think the 20-degree one we did in the other webinar came out around 45 minutes.
38.
38, okay. Let's see.
So while I did switch over to the fine grit wheel, and I went ahead and changed my RPM speed to actually go to 12,000 RPMs per minute. I guess I don't
While
need to say RPM per minute because that's kind of repetitive, isn't it?
Yeah. Also, everybody give a shout out to Cory for his birthday tomorrow. Got a bunch of April babies got this week. So,
thanks, dude.
Yep, thank you.
So you can see now it's even more frosted, and you can almost actually, I can start to see the intaglio surface through it. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the other splint now, and then we'll you get to see me dance around moving stuff around. And I'm gonna do half of this one at first just so you can see the difference. Oh, I hope you can see the difference between the two. Kind of hard to see it if I put the light down on it. So you can see this side was done with the coarse. This was done with the fine afterwards. So you can see the fine is much more transparent than what the coarse was. So that's why we do that. We do it with two different wheels. The coarse first and then the fine.
Dan wants to know if you're going to clean up like I did on your birthday.
Yeah, I'm going to go ride dirt bikes. So I'll clean up eventually, but yeah, it won't be so clean by the end of it, that's for sure. Oh. Just about good to go.
All right, any other questions on what he's doing now?
All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna remove the Uvatron, and then I'm gonna set up my lathe. So I got a couple more minutes while I get everything set up.
And what he's going to be using today on the lathe is going to be our pumice. You could also use the PS Dazzle pumice substitute, but what he's using today is going to be just regular pumice. Did have a somewhat unrelated question, but we'll go ahead and field it. Dan was asking, what do we have, or does Whitmix plan to have their digital form this fall? As far as I know, I think the plan is to still have it. And again, it would, I think a lot of it would depend on, since we're doing them off site now, whether the hotel and the vendors and all that we have coming, you know, if they're still going to be here and what the travel regulations are going to be looking like. But that is, you know, I think it's about probably 6 months out now, around that.
Yeah, it's a valid question.
I think for right now, the plan is still to have it, but of course, we're going to have to wait to see how things develop a little bit more to give you a definite answer on that.
We would like to say yes. Yeah, we hope so, but it all depends on what all transpires. All right. Oops. I think I may have lost you, Evan. I don't know if it's still.
No, I can see you.
Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah. Sweet. So I had to move my laptop over so I can hang the webcam from that. So it's just kind of juggling everything around and getting it all set up. All right. You guys get to see a 360-degree view of whip mix there.
The wet bench.
Yeah. So let me move that over. Yeah, move it over here. Set that over. All right. So I think that's starting to. I think that kind of looks okay. What do you think? It'll work.
Yep. Looks
All
good.
right. So we're gonna start with a wet lathe with pumice. And so once again, Evan already pointed out what pumice we're using. This is the medium grit, and then we do have some dry rag wheels that we will switch over to. And then we have an acrylic finishing compound. I would love to say I know what it is. It's been at Whitmix forever. I don't know. That's where me and Evan were like, we really need to find exactly what we're using. So if anybody's out there using an acrylic or maybe even a PMMA polish that comes in a rectangular purple brick, let us know if you're watching what it is, because that's what we're using today. So I have two different types of rag wheels that I'm using for the pumice. I have a smaller one and a larger one. I'm going to start with the larger one. All right, let me go and throw a little bit of water in. I'll throw a little bit of, get that going. I have to add some more here in a little bit. All right, so I'm going to go at a slower speed with it, and I hope you guys can see okay. It looks like it's a halfway decent view. So I'm going to just go ahead and pile up some of that pumice and then just start polishing away. Now what we're doing right now is we're taking away the micro scratches that was created from the printing process, from the layering process, and then also we're taking away the scratches from those fiber wheels. Now I'm not pushing really heavily. I'm just lightly running it across it. I'm going to alternate the direction. Oop. Sometimes they fly out of your hands as well. Yeah. And this material is pretty resilient.
How long would you say, when you're not explaining all the different steps, that it takes you to go from the curing unit to a finished polished splint?
It takes me after the curing unit, it takes, I can do 6 an hour, so it's 10 minutes per.
Okay.
I know that for when we went to Chicago for lab day, because we polished up a whole bunch for the AFP hands-on course that we did. All right. So I'm just going to keep hitting it with the pumice. And already, I mean, it's starting to already turn into a transparent state. I mean, so it's kind of hard to see. I should probably get something so I don't drape it on top of the laptop. All right, so you can already see it's starting to get transparent. So I'm going to continue going with that pumice. And then if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask it. Even any questions from what we've already covered in the first 2 days, whether it be design steps, the printing process, any questions whatsoever.
So we did have a question come in from Anthony. Are we intentionally leaving the pumice wheel firmer by not cutting away the threading on the rag wheel? For this stage, I would say, yeah. We don't want a really loose wheel. But that, you can kind of determine that based on your own preference. If you prefer a looser wheel, then I would go ahead and trim it. But we've come to find that we like the firmer one. And then Dan wanted to point out that we have a right-hand lathe, so that's probably why there's a little bit more trouble for you on that. But you know, just watch what you're doing and be careful. Maybe we'll have to get a left-hand one if you keep doing it.
Yeah. My plan is to train somebody else.
Yeah.
Except it is kind of nice to get away from everyday work and do a little bit of lab work every once in a while. All right. So it's starting to look pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and I keep just a little cup of water, and if I'm doing a batch of them, I just put them in there while I wait for the next step. And so let's go ahead and do this one here. Now this is the one that Evan designed. The first one was actually a sample for a customer. So Evan's had a little bit more detail on it. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to work that out. And where we're at. All right.
Let's see. Now it's time to kick in the elevator music.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of this is kind of maybe a dulling process.
If there's any other questions, just go ahead and type them into the question panel, and we'll address them while he's finishing up that polishing, or pumicing, I should say.
And if there's no questions, Evan, if you want to go ahead and pull up maybe the Splint Studio, and you can, you know, I guess walk through a design and cover it again while we're going through. I mean, people can watch both screens. This part that we're doing right now is pretty self-explanatory. We're just pumicing the actual splint itself.
Let's see, we had a question about which curing unit was that we used for the customer's guard. Was that done in the same IntelliRay, or did we do that?
Yep.
Okay, yep, so same unit that we showed.
Yep, the IntelliRay. So I still did the IntelliRay. And the reason, once again, I like the IntelliRay is because of the sheer fact I can do the denture resin and I can do my splint resin in one curing unit, because that's what was validated for it. Starting to look like it's coming together.
All right, so I just made a copy of the one we did Monday. If there's any questions from anybody who's been with us through the whole Splint 101 series, if we've got any questions related back to the design, just put them in the chat and we'll address them while he's finishing the pumicing.
All right.
Okay, we did have a question from Kevin. Is there any difference in designing off scan stone models as opposed to a digital scan? In general, I would say because we're dealing with a 50 to 100 micron offset internally, you're probably not going to see a ton of difference. The big thing would be the quality, of course, of the intraoral scan. Just like the quality of the analog impression would matter as well. If you are going off of an analog impression, then what you would want to do, kind of like what we saw earlier, is deal with any of your like any pulls in the impression material or bubbles. You'd want to sculpt that out if you're not going to actually one, pour a model and then clean up the model, or if you're going to do an impression scan, then you would want to virtually clean that up. And then really the big thing would just be the accuracy of the scanner and the quality. That is one issue, especially in full arch models. That there can tend to be issues if the intraoral scan strategy hasn't been followed, then you can get overlapping of surfaces or a kind of a cross arch either expansion or contraction as these scanners cross the midline. If you're not following the manufacturer's scan strategy for crossing the anterior, that's usually where you have those issues. And then you could see that you're having a problem with fit in that regard.
So I went ahead and just washed the splints with some cold water. And now what I'm looking for now is any sort of deep scratches. I can see that I maybe have a couple on them, but it's not super severe. It's gonna be hard to see, but you can see that it's already starting to become even more transparent as we're looking at it just from the pumicing. And I did dry them off. So I'm actually going to move to the actual rag wheel with the polish itself, polishing compound, and then we'll go ahead and see how they look from there.
So Pavel sent over a link that shows some polishing compounds, so I'm just going to bring that up real quick.
Oh, it kind of looks like that, maybe that purple one there.
Yeah, right here. So the purple, or I guess what they're calling pink. Yeah, that would make sense. It's a high shine compound. So
yep. Thank you, Pavel, for pointing that out.
Yeah, thank you.
Fairly inexpensive too, $7, and you too can have that at your dental lab or dental office. All right. So I'm going to go in and find just one of the rag wheels we've already been using, and I'm going to grab the actual high shine polishing compound.
So while he's getting ready for that, Dan had another question about our courses, and one was if we were going to have the digital denture course around the country. I believe that was, they were talking about that and trying to figure out the logistics of it. But again, with what's happened recently, that's kind of put any of that on hold. But I believe they were talking about making it kind of a traveling show at one point.
Oop. Yeah, so there was talk of doing a traveling show. I think right now, obviously it's on hold now. We are doing a micro digital denture course next week, and so yep. We are going to have Evan's in it and Bryce is in it. Let me tilt this back a little bit. All right, so Bryce is doing it and Evan, and so those two guys, they're going to go through denture design and scanning on Monday, and then they're going to do the 3D printing on Wednesday, and then on Friday they're going to do the curing and the characterization process with the annex gum. So that's going to be super exciting for everybody to watch.
Yep.
So I'm going to go ahead, and I just barely even touched it, and it's already starting to get really pretty clear. So let's go ahead.
We had another question from Kendrick. How do the layer lines in the resin affect the intaglio surface for patient cleaning? The outside's polished, but what about the inside? So yeah, it is a great question. We can't really polish the intaglio. The main reason being that all your fit goes out the window when you start doing that. So yes, I mean, potentially the layer lines would, if you print in 100 micron layers, could make it, or will make it harder to clean. Shouldn't really affect any kind of comfort. But if you were more concerned with that and making an easier to clean surface, you could print at 50 micron layers. And that would reduce kind of the stair steppiness or that surface topography. You have anything you want to add to that, Cory?
Nope. And so, I mean, I didn't really spend that much time at it at all. And you can start to see, it's kind of hard to see in that webcam, but the transparency of it. Now, the intaglio surface there, you can see that, but that's because you can't polish that surface there. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to hit it with this lathe. And then what I like to do afterwards is I like to hit it with an actual, just a super soft rag wheel, no polishing compound whatsoever. And it really gives like a high shine. I'm going to change this wheel out real quick. flip it around.
So Dan asked a question, how do we sign up for that? I assume that's in reference to the courses next week. If you go to our website,
There we go.
whipmix.com, and go to the training option at the top, and just scroll down. This is going to be all of these free training courses. So you can see right here, week of the 20th, we have Digital Dentures 101, and you'll just click on the registration button and sign up. We also have temporaries coming the week after, followed by abutment design. And then probably by the time we start getting towards the end of this, we'll be adding some more. If anybody has any ideas on what they'd like to see, you can submit that. You can probably just, do we have a link for that, or do we want to just have people email our product support page?
Let's have people just email the product support page. I mean, we're taking all types of ideas. I know I want to work, I want to get a what's new at 2020 for 3Shape 2020.
Yep.
So that's an idea of one. And then I know there's a couple more, Evan, that you had some ideas on that I think will be great additions to this, to the series coming up soon. So if you have any of these like 3-part series that you want to see for a design, let us know. We're always more than happy to present this for you guys and put something together. All right. So I don't know if Dan, you're watching this, but if you ask me, this looks pretty dang clear so far. Oh, let me get rid of some of that polishing compound. It's kind of hard for the camera to focus on it because clearly it's so shiny. But on this surface, you can see it is frosted looking, but that's because of the layers. We cannot polish that part. However, this side here, it's pretty transparent.
Yep. Yeah, just being able to see that right there. The surface. Yeah. If you can see the contour of the teeth, that means it's pretty much crystal clear at that point.
Yeah.
Dan says he believes you. We had a question from Anthony. As I finish my guards now, I like to bevel the labial surface. What's the minimum material thickness, thinness tolerance? So that we can go back to the IFU. And again, I do apologize. I have the IFU from our website, not the most current one, but that should be getting switched out pretty soon. So these values aren't quite right. The minimal occlusal was that 2.2 or 2 minimum. And then the minimum sidewall thickness is going up to 1.5. So aside from the very edge, you'd probably want to be at 1.5. But if you want to bevel that off, as long as you don't have lots of areas below that, then it should be fine. If it's just that edge, then you should be okay. But overall, you don't want to be below 1.5, and then on the occlusion below 2 when you're finished polishing. So these recommendations are not, design it this way and then grind it down. You want to your final product needs to meet these.
All right, so just about done with the second one.
We had a question from Nicola that takes us kind of back to Wednesday, but do we suggest using anti-aliasing? I'd say, and Cory can add to this, I would say almost certainly yes. If you don't use it, you're going to get more stair-stepping along your XY contours. Whereas here we just have to deal kind of with the Z resolution contours. But if you take anti-aliasing off, you're going to see more surface texturing. So, I mean, is there anything you want to comment on about that, Cory?
No, I mean, we use anti-aliasing for everything here at Whipmix. So, I mean, everything that we distribute, as whether it's a sample or a printed actual production part, I mean, it all has anti-aliasing on it. So here's the second one. This one was designed a little bit thinner, but you can also still see that surface there. That's a good view of it. All right, so from here, I'm gonna power this down. I'm gonna go and switch to the very soft rag wheel. We're gonna hit it just a one time real quick. And then I have one more trick up my sleeve to make it clearer.
While you're switching that out, Ben had a question. Can you add material on the surface? So yes, you can add material. You can either add using the liquid resin, and what we've used is a UV flashlight to cure it, and then you put it in your you do the final cure again. Or you can add regular ortho acrylic. It will stick to it. But one thing you will notice if you're doing it that way is that after you've cured the splint and then add with the ortho acrylic, there's going to be a little bit of a color mismatch because of that slight tinting you get during the curing. And I also did have a comment from our sales manager, Chris Fry, pointing out that we have done some side-by-side tests. And like Cory had mentioned earlier, the IntelliRay and the Sunray, you do see a little bit of that tinting. You see that tinting effect more than with the auto flash.
Right.
But the trade-off is that right now the auto flash is not approved on as many materials in like FDA IFUs. So like for instance, what Cory mentioned with the Denka resins, if you use this, the Sunray or the IntelliRay, then that works for both of them. But I believe right now the auto flash is not on the Denka 510K.
So I'm gonna go rinse these off real quick with some water, hit them with some compressed air, and then we'll do the one last trick to really make them transparent.
So we had another question from Dan. It's a really good one. Would you do an equilibration before all the final polishing, or at what stage would you put it on a cast and equilibrate? Me personally, I would equilibrate it after doing probably just the coarse wheel.
Yep.
Basically as soon as you've taken those supports off, if you're going to do an equilibration on a articulator, or even chair side, I would do it then continue with your polishing. Because everything after that coarse removal, I mean, we've got the supports off, but if we need to make any larger scale adjustment, that would be the time to do it.
So if y'all can see up close now, we can see how transparent these are. Both of them looking really good. So the final step that I have is I'm actually going to place some mineral oil on that intaglio surface. And so this is an extremely expensive fancy brand from Kroger, mineral oil. And I couldn't find any Q-tips, so I have a test swab. So I'm actually gonna use the swab and put a little bit on. So I'm only gonna do half of it and put a little bit in. Did not think about grabbing a Q-tip before this. It would have been a little more helpful.
We had another comment / question come in. Let's see, I got it all wrong. I thought after printing, then some grinding and polishing, then the job is ready. This webinar, there will be another round of curing, then polishing. Don't we have a system yet that print a job and go directly to the patient's mouth? So I think there might be a little confusion on this subject. So the curing that we showed today is the same curing that we spoke about yesterday. So the only time you'd be doing a secondary cure step would be if you added to it. This is all these biocompatible resins can't go straight from the printer and be washed and then directly in the mouth. They got to have that final cure.
Surface cure.
Yeah, the final surface cure for the biocompatibility. Then as far as the grinding and doing all that, as this software develops and as your skills with using it develop, then really you shouldn't be needing to do a bunch of stuff afterwards, aside from what Cory's showing with the polishing. Even to the point that once the articulator transfer is supported, and transferring of face bows and that kind of stuff, then you really might not even have to do a physical equilibration. You should probably at that point be able to do it all in the software and go straight to your removal of the supports, after that post cure and then the final polish.
So now we can see with my splint itself. So this side did not have any of the mineral oil. This side does. I mean, it's fairly transparent. Let's see if we can get a better angle of it. Maybe not. But you can see it looks Really good. There we go. That's camera's focusing in on it.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, that's it for the polishing process. So remember the key takeaways from this. Let me set this back some more. So the key takeaways from this is we're going to first, when we're done printing, we're going to remove it from the build plate. We're going to remove the supports. We're going to wash the splint in a 2-bath alcohol system versus the dirty bath. The second one is a fresh, clean alcohol bath. From there, we're going to cure it. You have to use one of the validated curing units, either the Auto Flash or the Uvatron. Those are the two currently validated curing units. If you use a Uvatron, it's 5 minutes. If you use the Auto Flash, it's 6,000 flashes. You have to follow that protocol to a T because it is part of the FDA 510K. Beyond that, we're going to use our two different fiber wheels. So we have our coarse fiber wheel and our fine one. So we have our coarse one here, which is the brown. We have our red, which is the fine fiber wheel. And we're going to start with the fine. We're going to remove all of the little dimples from the supports. And then we're going to remove all the scratching that the coarse wheel has caused with the fine wheel. And then from there, we're going to jump into the wet lathe. We're going to use we used a medium grit pumice. If you use a coarse grit, then you're going to create more scratching. Medium grit works great if you follow the first steps. From there, we have our I want to call it Purple Wonder polishing compound, since we just newly discovered what it is. But this polishing compound does a wonderful job. Any finishing or fine polishing compound will do the same. And we're going to go ahead and polish it down. And then I use a soft rag wheel for a final polish itself. Let me move the stuff out of the way. So it's a very soft, very fluffy rag wheel. And if you follow that process, you too can have a glass-like splint. It actually looks really good. I mean, it's extremely transparent.
It does. Yep. We had a question come in, let's see, from Anthony. Curing question, can I use my Triad 2000 or Intera triple light cure? At this time, no, because they're not what's been approved through our IFU with the FDA. That's not to say in the future that we won't add more to it. I have had a lot of people ask about the Triad one, so that might be one that we look into. But it's all about whether they have the right wavelength and basically the amount of energy delivered to the splint. And because it's a biocompatible class 2 material, we've got to do, we have to, test each one. We can't just make a blanket statement about doing post-curing.
Yep.
And we had another one from Ben. Do you have a model to check the fit? So we do have a model. I can run it over to Cory. I do have to make one adjustment. If you've been with us through the whole time, there was a pull that I adjusted in the software. And if I don't adjust that, or if I don't remove that on the model, then of course we're gonna have a little fit issue. So let me go take that off and then give it to Cory.
I have also have a model for this splint here that I printed for the customer as a sample. Let me grab that as well. It was designed as if it had retention on it. Let me go grab it real quick. And it has a little bit of a snap, but it does fit. So, and I'm guessing when it was designed, the retention amount was most likely set to 50 microns. So there's a little bit of a snap to fit. But for example, here's the sample model that was sent in. I went and model built it, printed it in our new Ivory, our third revision of it, the OS Ivory. And then here's our splint. And it is down on. And then here's the one, that model that we scanned in. Oh, that's perfect.
That's good.
Yeah. So you can see all the way around, kind of hard to see with the background we have. Maybe if I moved out of the light, you can see it's fit all the way around. So it looks like it was designed a little off the post here, I would have probably actually went around a little bit the height of contour there next time. But yeah. So both splits
yeah,
split. Yeah, absolutely.
we had a question from Sharon. Does the whip mix Dazzle work any better or easier than the medium pumice? So we actually, and if you want to take that, Cory.
Well,
Or-
me and Evan, we were talking about that this morning. It's like, we should really try our Dazzle. And so that would, I'm going to keep the lathe up here. I have a couple more that I need to actually polish. So I'll go ahead and grab some of our Dazzle and see what type of a difference that makes, and see what happens. It should work, I would imagine.
Yeah, I would think, similar to other acrylics, a lot of it comes to preference on what you prefer. So
Yep.
I wouldn't think that it would have a negative effect on it.
And the cool thing is, with this being so transparent, maybe a little hard to see on your guys' end, but it's actually the cuss tips of the teeth are all being completely seated into the splint itself. So it's a decent fit.
Yep. Oh, we had another question from Trish. Do you rinse the splint after you apply the mineral oil?
You can. I mean, I applied it a little bit heavy. If I was to go back, I would apply a little bit less of the actual mineral oil, or if I had a proper application tip. You can rinse it, but it will rinse away that mineral oil a little bit as well. Usually I'll use like compressed air and blow it out. Like so. Any other questions we may have? Guessing that may be a no.
Yep, I think that's got it.
All right.
Let's see.
Well, once again, oh, go ahead.
There was this question about, can you show us the fit of the splint on the cast one? I'm assuming the one on the stone model. It looks off on the
Oh, yeah.
posterior.
It is off on the posterior from the design. I mean, it didn't actually lap all the way over. So if you're to look at the actual lap there, it's almost completely flat, kind of hard to see. But yeah, it doesn't actually go all the way around, because I'm not going to blame the dental lab or the designer for this one.
Well, the
But
bottom line is it fits. It's just
yeah,
it doesn't wrap as far over on as the other one that we saw in the printed model.
It fits all the way around, and it does. I mean, if you could be here in person, you can see that it is going all the way down on the cuss tips where it was wrapping over.
Yeah.
Any other questions filtering through at all?
Nope, I think that's it. So once again, we'd like to thank everybody who attended today, and we look forward to seeing you guys on the attendee list for our Digital Dentures 101 next week. Again, that will be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 12 to 1. And you'll be hanging out with me and Bryce.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited for next week. We'll all learn a lot. And if you haven't signed up, sign up now. For people that are attending, there is a maximum amount of people that can watch at the same time. So if you really want to watch in, I would go ahead and log in maybe 15, 20 minutes early for this. Once again, this was recorded and you can watch it at a later date. So you can, if you want to show it to anybody, if they want to see this process, or if you want to see the process again, you can. Also, this is CE approved, so you will receive a quiz at the end. So if you answer that, you'll get your CE credits. Yeah, that's it. I mean, once again, thank you all so very much for your time. It was a pleasure doing this week. We'll look forward to the following weeks to come.
Let's see, where do we go to watch the recording? The recording should be posted on that same site. If we scroll up to the previous weeks, we have watch recording and receive CE credit. And again, that is if you go to whipmix.com, click training at the top of the screen, and then scroll down.
Yep.
All right, everybody stay safe, and we'll see you on Monday.
See you guys.